Imagine this. You are the most powerful man on earth. Every command you speak shifts the fate of empires. Armies kneel before you. Gold flows endlessly into your treasury. Poets immortalize your name. You sleep in palaces, not beds. Your statue is carved into marble while you are still alive. The gods of Rome seem to whisper your triumph across the winds of every conquered land. And yet, at night you weep. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, privately, like a man tormented by a truth no crown can shield him from. You wake before dawn, long before the rustle of servants or the sound of morning birds, and instead of reaching for wine or pleasure or spectacle, you reach for a journal. You sit in silence, your hand trembling slightly, and you write not for glory, not for legacy, but to survive your own mind. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This was Marcus Aurelius, not a king, but an emperor. Not just an emperor, but the emperor of emperors, ruler of the Roman Empire at its peak, a man who had every earthly pleasure at his feet and chose instead to wrestle with eternity. Why? Why would a man who had everything the modern world worships, power, wealth, control, spend his life writing about death, loss, desire, anger, and letting go? Why would the most powerful figure in the Western world describe life as a battlefield of the mind, where the real enemies are not barbarians at the gate, but illusions in the self? Why, at the height of his reign, would he pen meditations not for others, but for himself? Raw, unfiltered truths scrawled like lifelines across the pages of time. And more unsettling still, why do those truths resonate more now, in the age of AI and spaceflight, than they did in the time of swords and togas? What if Marcus Aurelius saw something we still don't? What if, amid the roar of chariots and war drums, he heard a deeper silence? The silence beneath desire, beneath fear, beneath identity itself. You're told to chase your dreams, to strive for more, to build, consume, climb, dominate. But what if the man who had already won the game looked into the mirror and saw a prison? What if success without wisdom is a curse? What if the self you've been constructing, brick by brick, choice by choice, is not a self at all, but a mask passed down from a sick society? And what if Aurelius, alone in his chambers, solved the riddle of the cosmos not by conquering the world, but by surrendering to its chaos? The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. You have power over your mind, not outside events. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. These aren't quotes for calendars or coffee mugs. These are the cries of a man who stared into the void and refused to blink. A man who understood that suffering doesn't come from life's brutality, but from our refusal to accept its terms. And now you, born centuries later, sit in a world Aurelius could never have imagined. A world flooded with information, but starved of meaning. A world louder than ever, yet lonelier than ever. A world where the algorithms know your mind better than your own mother. Yet his words still cut through the noise like lightning across a black sky. Why? Because the battle hasn't changed. The terrain has shifted. The tools have evolved. But the war, the real war, is the same. You wake up and fight yourself every day. You compare, you crave, you doubt. You try to control what cannot be controlled. You try to escape what cannot be escaped. You search for meaning in a world that sold you a fantasy and called it fulfillment. But what if you're searching in the wrong direction? What if meaning isn't something you find, but something you remember? And what if Marcus Aurelius, cloaked in robes and riddled with responsibility, mapped the path not to external success, but to internal sovereignty? He ruled the world and chose to master the soul. But before we discover how he did it, we must first understand the invisible enemy he was fighting. An enemy not taught in schools, not named by politicians, not recognized by those who suffer most from it. It's the silent virus infecting modern identity. A lie so old it wears the costume of truth. A wound so deep it masquerades as personality. And it's still inside you. Let's go deeper. You were born into a story you didn't write. Before you could speak, they gave you a name. Before you could choose, they handed you rules. They told you what matters, what doesn't, what success looks like, what failure feels like, who you are, who you should become, and like a sponge, you absorbed it all, unknowingly, uncritically. This is the first wound, not the pain of rejection or trauma, not yet, but the pain of being defined, shaped by a world that never asked who you really are. And that world, it was broken long before you arrived. Marcus Aurelius lived in a Rome built on hierarchy, dominance, spectacle, a place where people were celebrated for killing each other in arenas, where power was worshipped and weakness crucified. Yet somehow in that same world he wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Why? Because he saw something that only the most brutally honest minds ever dare to see. The external world is a mirror of the internal one. And most people, whether in ancient Rome or modern life, are ruled not by thought, but by conditioning. You think you're choosing, but how many of your thoughts are inherited? How many of your desires are borrowed? Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask you wear to survive, the socially acceptable version of you, polished, predictable, programmed, a survival strategy masquerading as identity. You smile when you should scream, you conform when you should rebel, you chase what others want, then wonder why you feel empty when you finally catch it. You became what the world needed you to be, not who you truly are. This is the second wound, the fracture between the inner truth and the outer image, the splitting of the soul. And from that split emerges a lifelong conflict, a gnawing restlessness that whispers, "This isn't it. This isn't me." Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "The greatest mistake you can make is to confuse your needs with your desires." Modern society has engineered your desires with terrifying precision. Billboards and social media, scripted lives in a loop, telling you that happiness comes in the form of likes, luxury, admiration. But these are not needs. These are echoes of your emptiness, packaged and sold back to you as solutions. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Viktor Frankl, who faced Auschwitz and found meaning in horror, said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." This is what Marcus Aurelius discovered, alone, even as emperor. No amount of wealth could silence the mind. No applause could fix the soul. The only path left was inward. But going inward is not safe. It is not sterile. It is not sanitized like the advice of modern self-help. It is war. Carl Jung knew this when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Your unconscious is not asleep. It is alive, driving your relationships, your addictions, your fears. It is the reason you fall into the same patterns, the same arguments, the same doubts, again and again and again. And it thrives in silence, because no one taught you how to confront it. Instead, they taught you how to perform, how to be liked, how to succeed, how to blend in, how to manage symptoms, not dig up roots. But Marcus didn't seek popularity. He sought truth, even when it shattered his illusions, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. He stared into the abyss of human desire and saw that most people are not living, they are reacting, they are not thinking, they are calculating, they are not loving, they are attaching, controlling, clinging. He saw that the mind, if left unexamined, becomes a tyrant far worse than any Caesar. And here is the third wound, the belief that your suffering is personal, when in fact it is structural. You inherited a world that never taught you how to live with your own mind. Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "Man is condemned to be free." What he meant was not that freedom is joyous, but that it is terrifying. Once you realize that no one is coming to save you, that meaning, direction, peace, truth must be created by you, the weight is immense. Most people run from that responsibility. Marcus Aurelius didn't. He ran into it. He didn't meditate to relax. He meditated to survive. His meditations were never meant for the world. They were written like confessions, to wrestle his ego, his impulses, his pain. He knew the enemy wasn't Rome. It wasn't the Senate or the plagues or the wars. The enemy was within. He wrote, The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This wasn't optimism, it was alchemy, the turning of pain into power. But that alchemy requires a crucible, and that crucible is your mind. So ask yourself, how many of your beliefs are truly yours? How many of your fears are just inherited wounds with different names? How many of your dreams are actually cages? You see, Marcus didn't just wrestle with life's meaning. He confronted its absurdity. Like Dostoevsky, who saw beauty in the tragic. Like Nietzsche, who saw strength in the abyss. Like Gabor Mate, who sees addiction not as weakness, but as a cry for wholeness. Aurelius realized that the true disease of man is not war, or poverty, or even death. It is disconnection. From the self, from nature, from the soul's own voice. That's why the world feels loud but empty. That's why your victories often feel hollow, because you were never taught how to be with yourself. But the emperor was. He didn't inherit wisdom, he built it. And in doing so, he unearthed a truth so radical, so threatening to the status quo, that even today we hesitate to face it, because it means that the real work, the only work, is internal, and that everything else is distraction. Now we uncover the price of forgetting this truth. Look around, not at the world, but at the people in it, the silent agony in their eyes, the smiles that don't reach their soul, the success stories that echo with a strange hollowness. They laugh, they post, they hustle, and yet beneath it all, there's a quiet desperation, a restlessness that no achievement seems to cure, a void that no affirmation can fill. What if this isn't failure? What if this is normal? The world teaches you that you're free, but that freedom is carefully curated. You can choose your job, your clothes, your coffee order, but can you choose your thoughts? Can you choose your desires? Or have they already been chosen for you? This is the illusion of autonomy, a perfectly designed system of internalized control. We call it free will, but it's often just pre-approved options from a shelf of manufactured values. You're free to want what they've already programmed you to want, free to chase a version of success that leaves you drained, free to consume distractions until your real dreams are buried beneath dopamine loops and debt. Marcus Aurelius warned of this trap, though he lived centuries before smartphones and dopamine science. Be neither distracted by the world around you nor infected by its madness, he wrote. Madness, not chaos. Madness. Because what happens when a society rewards dysfunction? When burnout is praised as productivity and constant stimulation is confused with vitality? What happens when you live so far from yourself that stillness feels like danger? You begin to fear silence, to avoid your own mind, to seek perpetual noise, not for joy, but to drown out the aching whisper that says, "This isn't who I am." Carl Jung would call that voice your shadow, the part of you that holds everything you've repressed, your anger, your sorrow, your unmet potential, your unlived life. And the more you avoid it, the more it rules you, silently, invisibly, entirely. It leaks into your relationships as control or passivity, into your work as obsession or apathy, into your addictions, not just to substances, but to validation, to busyness, to being needed. These aren't problems. They're symptoms. Symptoms of a soul exiled from its own home. Gabor Mate speaks of this often, how addiction isn't the pursuit of pleasure, but the escape from pain, and how most pain is unacknowledged, unprocessed, inherited. You're not just carrying your own suffering, you're carrying generations of it. Inherited trauma, cultural programming, unquestioned values, all inside your nervous system, shaping your reactions before you even think. And yet we keep telling ourselves, this is just how life is. This is just what it means to be human. This is just adulthood. But Marcus Aurelius disagreed. To him, a distracted life wasn't adulthood. It was spiritual negligence, a betrayal of the divine rationality that he believed lived in every person. Not in a religious sense, but in the sense of a higher order, a cosmic intelligence you can align with only through inner clarity. The universe is change, he wrote. Our life is what our thoughts make it. And here lies the most dangerous consequence of all. You become the architect of your own cage, Not because you want to suffer, but because the modern world has trained you to trust everything except your own mind. You look to others to tell you how to feel. You rely on screens to tell you who you are. You wait for circumstances to give you permission to be at peace. And slowly, imperceptibly, you outsource your entire existence. Even your suffering becomes aesthetic, curated for public consumption, posted with filters and vague captions. You're encouraged to express yourself, but only in ways that are marketable, legible, safe. But what if the deepest parts of you aren't safe? What if your truth is messy, wild, contradictory, ancient? Marcus didn't find peace by silencing that part. He found it by listening to it, by disciplining it, not with shame, but with wisdom. Because here's what no one tells you. The mind is a liar, but it's a liar that wants to be caught. When it tells you you're not good enough, it wants you to ask, according to whose definition? When it tells you you'll be happy when, it wants you to break the cycle and say, what if I already am beneath all this noise? That's the power Marcus discovered. The power not to control the world, but to see through it. To see the cultural illusions for what they are. Fog. To see ego for what it is. Armor built in fear. To see success for what it is. Often just the absence of questioning. But most never see through it, because it's working. This matrix of distractions is functioning exactly as intended. To keep you just uncomfortable enough to keep reaching, but just distracted enough to never look inward. It keeps you consuming instead of creating, performing instead of reflecting, existing instead of awakening. The cost? A life lived from the outside in, not from the inside out. Marcus called this a form of self-betrayal. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He didn't mean that pain disappears. He meant that it becomes purposeful, transformed, integrated. That is what the world has forgotten, and what you now must remember. Suffering without reflection becomes repetition, but suffering with reflection becomes transcendence. And yet this transcendence is not handed to you. It must be earned by attention, by presence, by radical honesty. The price of freedom is not rebellion, it's responsibility. And if you want to escape this invisible prison, you must do something most people fear more than death. Sit alone. Think deeply. Face the self beneath the persona. Because only then can the illusion break. Only then can the rebellion begin. Next, we step into that rebellion, not as warriors, but as philosophers. Not to conquer the world, but to reclaim the soul. You've been taught to believe that rebellion looks like noise, that it's loud, violent, external. But real rebellion, the kind that changes your soul, is a quiet, internal fire. It doesn't scream, it burns. And what it burns first is you, not your body, not your goals, but the false self you've spent your whole life protecting. The version of you built to be liked, to be accepted, to be safe. This rebellion doesn't require weapons. It requires something far more terrifying, truth. And not the kind you post on social media or say in therapy. The kind that wakes you up at 3 a.m. with shaking hands and no answers. The kind that breaks you open and asks, what the hell have you been doing with your life? Marcus Aurelius called this moment turning inward to the ruling principle. The hegemonicon, the divine center of rationality, untouched by the world's illusions. He didn't say follow your feelings. He didn't say trust your passions. He said, find the flame inside you that cannot be manipulated and build your life around it. That's what separates a consumer from a philosopher, a slave from a sovereign. And it starts with one brutal, beautiful question. What have I been serving that I don't believe in? Have you been serving a job that eats your soul for a paycheck you use to numb the pain? A relationship where you perform love but don't feel it? A version of success that makes you look powerful while you feel hollow? Because here's the truth no one wants to say. Modern life is designed to reward obedience, not truth. To polish your mask, not reveal your face. To help you cope, not wake up. But rebellion isn't about escape. It's about returning to what is real, to what is eternal. And it begins when you stop negotiating with your own suffering. Nietzsche called this the path of the Übermensch, not a superior man in the physical sense, but one who has overcome the illusions of his time, one who invents his own values, not to feel powerful, but to stay free. And to do this, you must commit an unthinkable act in modern society. You must stop performing. Stop posting your pain for applause. Stop chasing healing as an aesthetic. Stop playing the part of the broken person waiting to be saved. You are not broken. You are buried under expectations, narratives, and fears you didn't create. The rebellion is digging, brutal, solitary, sacred digging. Carl Jung called this individuation the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. But here's the twist. You can't fix yourself into your real self. You have to let go. Let go of the guilt you inherited. Let go of the dream that was never yours. Let go of needing anyone to understand you before you understand yourself. This isn't about isolation. It's about sovereignty. Because until you are sovereign, every decision you make, every career, every partner, every ambition will be an echo of your conditioning, not your clarity. That's why Marcus Aurelius meditated on death every single day, not out of morbidity, but to cut through the noise. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This isn't a motivational quote. It's a knife. It slices through all your excuses, all your some days, all your once I'm ready. And it dares you to ask, what if this is it? What if this breath is the only one you're promised? Would you still spend it people-pleasing? Would you still silence your soul so you don't make others uncomfortable? Would you still cling to narratives that never gave you peace? Number, you'd change, not because you should, but because the illusion would no longer hold power. And that's what this rebellion is. Not a fight against the world, but a refusal to betray yourself ever again. To say no when your body says no. To walk away without guilt. To speak your truth even when your voice shakes. To reclaim every part of you that was abandoned, shamed, or forgotten. This is not easy. It will cost you friends. It will confuse your family. It will terrify the parts of you that still crave approval, but it will also free you. You'll laugh more because you're no longer pretending. You'll cry more because you're finally feeling. You'll need less because your worth is no longer for sale. You'll stop chasing moments and start inhabiting them. That's the power of this rebellion. It doesn't fix your life. It returns it. Returns your time, your energy, your direction. And from that raw, sacred center, something miraculous emerges. A new kind of clarity, not loud, not urgent, not dramatic, just real. Marcus Aurelius didn't live an easy life. He buried children, fought wars, carried an empire on his shoulders. But he died with peace, because he lived from within. That is the gift of rebellion, not to escape the world, but to move through it untouched by its madness. You will still struggle, but you will never again be owned. And as that fire grows inside you, you'll feel it. The fear will melt. The lies will crumble. The truth will roar, not with noise, but with silence. The kind of silence that says, I have returned to myself. Now there's only one question left. What is waiting for you on the other side of that return? That answer, that final, shattering truth, is what we uncover next. Imagine everything you've ever chased suddenly dissolves in your hands. Every goal, every fear, every person you tried to impress, gone. You're left standing naked in front of a mirror that doesn't lie. No filters, no titles, no stories. Just you. Not the version you've performed, but the essence that has always been quietly watching, beneath your panic, your pride, your endless grasping. What if that version of you, that silent witness, was the only thing that was ever real? That's the truth Marcus Aurelius saw while sitting alone in a palace surrounded by power, war, and death, that everything external is borrowed, but what lives within you is eternal. He wrote, "The universe is change. Life is opinion. The soul remains." And in that line, he shattered the illusion the world still believes today, that you must become something. You don't. You must remember what you are, not your trauma, not your accolades, not your image, but the stillness beneath all movement, the observer behind all thought, the flame that flickers even in your darkest night. The modern world has trained you to forget this. It screams that you are not enough unless you prove it, that you are lost unless you follow someone else, that you are broken unless you buy the cure. And you believed it. We all did, because the ego would rather feel pain than face silence. It would rather be important than be free. But Marcus Aurelius didn't just believe in freedom. He embodied it. He didn't escape the world. He transcended it by living as if the world could not take anything from him. Why? Because he had already surrendered the one thing most people die clinging to: control. The final realization, the one that burns away all pretense and leaves only peace, is this: you are not here to control the universe. You are here to align with it. And to align, you must listen, not to noise, not to opinion, but to the quiet, sacred intelligence pulsing inside your chest, the logos, the Tao, the divine spark. Call it what you will. It is not a belief. It is being itself, and it speaks in silence. This is the opposite of modern culture, which demands speed, reaction, identity. But your soul is not interested in performance. It is only interested in presence. Marcus knew this. That's why his words are not flashy. They are simple, director, eternal. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. No debate, no branding, no spiritual ego, just being. And that is the revolution. To stop thinking of life as a problem to solve and start living it as a mystery to serve. You are not here to win. You are not here to be liked. You are not even here to understand. You are here to live so deeply from your center that no external storm can shake you. To suffer without collapsing. To love without grasping. To lead without needing applause. Because once you are anchored in that inner stillness, nothing owns you. Not fear, not success, not even death. This is why Marcus Aurelius meditated on mortality, not as a source of dread, but as a mirror of clarity. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. And living in its truest form is not chasing. It is returning. Returning to your place in the cosmos, to the moment, to the self that never needed fixing, only remembering. In this space, suffering becomes sacred, not because it's desirable, but because it wakes you up. It strips you bare and shows you. This is who you are when nothing is left to protect. That's why the Stoics did not fear hardship. They welcomed it as fire welcomes wood, fuel for transformation, because the ego wants comfort. But the soul wants freedom, and freedom is not found in escape. It's found in the courage to be still while the world spins in madness around you. So ask yourself, what if you stopped trying to be someone and started being what you already are? What if you stopped chasing peace and remembered that it has always been the ground you're standing on? What if your anxiety wasn't a flaw, but a whisper from the soul asking, why are you pretending? What if your suffering was a teacher, not punishing you, but calling you home? The truth is, you've always known. You've just been afraid. Afraid to stop, afraid to listen, afraid to face the power that lives in your silence. But here's the secret Marcus Aurelius discovered, the one that made him sovereign in a world of chaos. You don't have to be anything. You only have to be. And when you fully arrive in that being, you will know. You never needed permission. You never needed approval. You never needed answers. Because the man who solves the universe doesn't solve it by force. He solves it by surrender to the mystery, to the moment, to himself. And so now the final question is not philosophical. It's personal. Not what is the meaning of life, but will you dare to stop searching long enough to feel it? Will you dare to become still enough to hear it? Because the moment you do, the second you step into that silence without flinching, you'll find it. The same truth Marcus Aurelius found 2,000 years ago. It doesn't speak in words. It doesn't arrive with answers. It comes as a breath, a presence, a knowing. You were never separate. You were never broken. You were never lost. You were the universe all along.